Welcome to Ultimate Hockey. I'm your host, Maguire, joined again by my co-host here that's been taking us through the first two playoff previews and more to come, but Shean Donovan. Sean, welcome again. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for
having me.
For
those of us who are checking us out online, we appreciate it very much. Doing something a little bit different. We've done some playoff previews, but we want to take an opportunity here to talk to Sean about some of his experiences through his career, going right back to Major Junior, in fact, because I think the one thing that a lot of people, by the way, first and foremost, have to say this, the show brought to you today by our very special guest, Molson Export Ale. Drink it hard, drink it fast, drink it by the gallon. Sean, you played for the legend, Brian Kilrea,
yes.
The one and only Hockey Hall of Famer, winning as coach, has a Coach of the Year award named after him, for God's sake.
Yeah.
I've seen this a million times. I know you've probably done it as well. Former 67s who end up in the NHL, at some point get a camera thrust in front of them. What was it like playing for Killer? What can you say about playing for the legend?
Killer, he is the legend. I guess for Killer, it was like he always treated you like men. And it's a lot of junior coaches that try to come in and try to really stomp on you and treat you like kids. But at that age, you're becoming young men. And so what Killer was really good at was treating you like men. But if he'd give you kind of a leash, and if you hung yourself, he would stomp on you hard. And that's what he did. But he was a really good coach. He was really into flow and skating. I think he was ahead of his time, because back then, when even in the hooking and holding era, he'd always, still talk about speed, and he'd get fast players on his team, and he'd be about, quick hockey, and his practice always had a lot of flow.
Yep.
And that's one thing I learned. And now that you look at coaches, they all kind of gone to that style. They want flow practices now. But Killer did that a long time ago. And he obviously got the most of his young guys, because he was hard. And you have to be hard on young guys, because at those ages you can stray pretty quick. And he wouldn't let the boys stray too far. So yeah, there's a couple of pee-pee whacks by a couple times I got it for sure.
No, but I know you only played briefly at the end because you're already getting going on your pro career. But did you not have Peter Lee briefly?
Yes, we had Peter Lee came in for the year.
It didn't go well for him there,
Oh, yeah.
As a former 67. But I want to talk to you a little bit more about coaching. But just quickly, I mean, Peter comes in. I think Killer was experienced shingles, I think, at the time, illness and whatnot. And Peter comes in, former 67, like a massive junior career in Ottawa. Sometimes that doesn't always translate. Can you just talk quickly about what he tried to instill as a coach with the 67s? I know you weren't there that long for him, but...
Yeah, like Peter Lee came in and he was obviously got the job because he was a very hard worker, and that's what he tried to instill into the players. But it was different. Killer just had this aura, and he was just good with young guys and hard on them and kept them in line. Not to say that Peter wasn't. Peter's had an unbelievable career now in Germany. Yeah. He's been part of the DEL and in Berlin. He's built the program up, and he's winning titles every year, and he's done a really good job there. And I got a lot of respect for Peter. But it's tough to replace a legend. You come in and you try to fill the shoes of a legend, which he can try to do.
Right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's tough. It is, and Killer coached that many years and was that successful for a reason. It just wasn't luck. He had a skill and he had an art to work with young guys. And I don't know if it was drinking Molson X or what it was, but there's so many different so many different stories with Killer and hard and being hard, but pushing us to be men, pushing us to be better players, and in the end, sometimes you come out of junior and be like, oh, that was tough, and you're mad at Killer because you thought he gave you too much of a hard time. But later in your life, you realize that what he did was made you into a man. And lots of teams, I remember going to San Jose, and they were like, I could tell you've been coached by Brian Killer just from the little things I did on the ice. So I had to thank him for that.
I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 graduates or something into the NHL right now that have come under him, and that includes free agents and whatnot, not just draft choices. But, Sean, I want to get on to the NHL, but just before we do, you played a lot of your junior career with a guy. You talk about your prototypical competitive performer, Mike Pekka. What Pekka was like. Tell us a little bit about what he was like in junior, what you saw out of him, and how maybe that translated for him. A small body size in an era when you still were looking, a lot of guys were looking for big guys. What about Mike Pekka as a teammate in junior?
Oh, he was unbelievable. He worked so hard, and he was a little guy. He had a really small frame. Sometimes you see guys on the ice and they look bigger than they are off the ice. You look at Patrick Waugh. He's a tiny guy, but he looks like a giant in the net compared to what he looks like, or Ryan Miller even. But for Mike Pekka, he was the same, and he could smoke guys. He was unbelievable at timing his hits, even in junior. And I seen him fight once in Guelph, and for a little guy, he beat up the guy because I think the guy didn't know he was his top scorer, Mike Pekka, coming in. And I remember once actually in Ottawa when Killer was so mad at the team that Pex played the whole third period. Like,
Come on.
yeah, the whole third period, and he came in the room after the second period and just yelled and screamed at us, said, nobody's working hard. This third period, Pex is playing the whole game. He's the only guy working for us. So Pex played the whole third period.
Seriously?
Yeah, but he played good, and he did deserve to play. We weren't playing good, and he was the type of guy who
The whole period?
the whole period. He never came off once. He just come over for the water break there between shifts, and so in Sault Ste. Marie, he played the whole 20 minutes.
Listen, I want to get into the NHL here, and we're doing this segment talking a little bit about you and your experiences, taking advantage that you're joining us here on these shows. You played for 14 coaches in the National Hockey League. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
14 different guys. And the reason I ask that is, as we're taping this, the Montreal Canadiens have recently lost to the Boston Bruins in the playoffs. And a coach named Jacques Martin has a very distinct style, shall we say. And it's not always favorable by the players, I think. And I point specifically to the third period of Game 4 in Montreal, where the Canadiens got down and went balls to the wall on offense and looked dynamite doing it. You played for teams that at times were the highest scoring teams in the NHL. You also played for coaches that I think had a defensive preference.
Yep.
Can you shed any light on our viewers right now on what it's like to play for anybody who would have been a defensive coach? I don't know who on your list would fit that bill, but Kevin Constantine or maybe a Dave Lewis. I don't know. Some of them would have for sure, but give us some thoughts on that.
I was pretty lucky in my career. I got to play for Kevin Constantine. He was an X and O's guy, and he really believed in his system, and his system was really good. So if you played his system, it was kind of easy. You knew where you stood with him, because if you played his system, you were playing. I remember he went kind of toe-to-toe with Igor Larionov. Not in the room, but they had, and Igor Larionov thought of him as Tikhonov. I'm playing in the Russian Red Army, I'm back in Russia. He was mad because Kevin Constantine didn't care who you were, and it was his way or the highway. And so he kind of, when he went to Pittsburgh, I wasn't there obviously, but Jagger and him kind of butted heads. Even though he had success, I think he brought Pittsburgh conference finals, and he got fired not too far after. He gets a lot out of his players, but the thing is, he just goes at the big boys too often, and that's not good for longevity in your career. But obviously, you got different guys like offensive coaches, like I guess Mark Crawford in Colorado would be more of a high-flying offensive guy, and I think he changed his style a little bit more to play more defense through his years. But in Colorado, we had a team that could score. We had Forsberg, Sakic, Fleury came in in spurts and just kind of let the horses go. And he was smart enough to do that, and we had success with that. But then the next year, you bring in Bob Hartley, then all of a sudden things change. You got Bob Hartley coming in here, and he's putting the rope on everybody. We're doing hard skates, and it's more systematic, and we're playing tight system. It's all about the system. So for sure, different styles. And with Bob Hartley, he ended up being in Colorado for 4 years, and he went to conference finals Game 7 3 times and won a cup. But he was so hard and so regimented that he didn't make it past the next year because the players wanted to change. But it bred success.
I just want to ask you, it's funny, I'm just asking seriously as a personal question. Played hockey my whole life, never anywhere close to the level you did, but played for coaches as well. And take us into the practices. So a coach goes, they've got the board, they're drawing the schematics. They're telling the lines, okay, where guys got to go. Now, you guys all have the ability, obviously, to know exactly, as the coach is saying it. That's basically, it's got to be his way or the highway, right?
Yep. If
they're telling you we want to do a 1-2-2, it better damn well be a 1-2-2. I mean, can you shed any light on what that was like at practice and how they're first designing those diagrams, if you will, that the certain styles that they want your teams to play with any by chance any. What about Kurt Fraser, for example? Like you played for him, I think, longer than anybody, if I'm not mistaken, or close to it.
Yeah.
I mean,
him and Daryl,
yeah. So what was his style? What was he like as a coach? Tell us what he was like at practice. He was a volatile guy on the ice. He had a switch, man. If he went off, look out.
He used to have a pretty funny line for every game, Kurt Fraser. He'd be we go through the lineups, he'd go player by player, and he used to go through some guys and be like, this D-man, he's dyslexic. He's 6'3", but plays like he's 3'6". Anyways, that was Kurt Fraser. He was volatile. But the thing is, in Atlanta, is they put the rings on him, like the ropes, because he just didn't let him coach the way I think he should have been able to coach there. Because when he got there, we were young, we're an expansion team, and I think they just were expecting the young guys to grow, and so they kind of made it not like just an easy environment. And I think Kurt wanted a hard environment where guys are playing hard and go out there and balls to the wall, and that's the kind of coach he was. But I don't think they really let him prosper and be the coach he could have been. But I take, for example, a good coach who did really good plans with Bob Hartley is probably the best coach I've had at practice. He'd have his plans, and every day he'd have a list of every drill we go through. And he did a lot of battle drills down low, but every day you knew where you're at. And everybody had a dot. Not everybody, but the extra guys who didn't play much would have a dot, and they'd get bag skated after practice. But every day you'd come into the rink, everybody look at the board, board and they knew exactly what they're going to do. Even if we had a bag skate last 10 minutes of the practice, you knew you were bag skating. So you had to work hard for those 10 minutes. Or a guy like Daryl Sutter, who was really hard coach. I love playing for Daryl Sutter because it was easy. You work hard or you don't
had
play.
him in San Jose and Calgary.
San Jose and Calgary. And when I left San Jose, I was just so excited to get a chance to play for Daryl again. And I got a chance in Calgary, and it was so exciting. But his practices were 45 minutes hard. But if you didn't work hard for your 45 minutes, he's gonna make practice 50 minutes of bag skating at the end. So you knew you had to skate hard, and it was intense. So he didn't care about the length of practice. He just cared about how hard you were going for those 45 minutes. And guys appreciate that because they knew they came to work for 45 minutes. They were done. And if they didn't, it was going to be a long, hard night.
We're down to our last couple of minutes, but you mentioned Daryl, and you played for him, obviously, in two different places. And you talk about how prepared a Bob Hartley is. And the reason I ask is here's a guy, you played for guys who never played in the NHL.
Yep.
And you played for guys like Daryl Sutter, part of, obviously, the most famous family in NHL history. With all due respect to the Gretzkys and the bit that Brent and Keith did as pros. What about Daryl? What about the intensity? The rumors about his intensity and the rumors of the buttons he could push here in a couple minutes.
When I was younger, I played for Daryl, and he put me in a good role. What he was good at was putting players into roles, and he expected me to play those roles. I remember we were playing the Philadelphia Flyers, and I got to play Sean Burr and Ronnie Sutter, his brother.
His brother, yeah.
And so we're playing, and the coach is his brother, is Daryl.
Yeah.
And so we're playing. We had to shut down the Legion of Doom, they said. And so I remember after, we actually got lucky. A couple games before, we'd scored a couple goals, so things were good. We thought we were pretty good. And then we played Legion of Doom. I think they scored 3 against us in the first period. Daryl grabbed us in the room, all three of us. Sean Burr, Ron, get in the room. We go in the room, and he's reaming us out. He's yelling and screaming at us. And I'm just like, you're sitting back like you're a little schoolboy just getting killed. And I'm looking over at Ronnie, and Ronnie's feeling like I am. I'm this young guy, and this is his brother yelling at him. But he's respecting him because he was so intense, but he cared so much, and you knew he cared. And you knew what your job was, and we weren't doing our job. We weren't. And he yelled at us, and he told us, "You're not playing defense. We got you guys here to play defense. You're a third line. You're a checking line. You're not scorers." So we got the message pretty quick.
Last minute, Sean, I got to ask you very quickly. You touched on Larry Onoff's comments with Constantine. Made me think of something right away. You played for the second European coach ever, Hinalinka. Did you not play for him, I think, at one point? Was he
just
gone
missed
from there?
him, yeah,
because
Rick Keogh came in.
Rick Keogh came in and replaced him. So maybe you only played for 13 coaches instead of 14. But and Rick Keogh, there's another guy, 50-goal sniper.
Yep.
Back in the day, Leaf draft choice and big trade, 3-way deal in 71 that brought him to Toronto and shipped him out of Toronto, I should say. But, I mean, I guess just to finish up with you on coaches, which has been the theme for this particular segment, and the reason I went down this road with you specifically was because of Jacques Martin and how I think whether he handled it correctly or possibly mishandled it in Montreal. And then you look at a Claude Julien in Boston who had a lot of pressure. The rumor was if Montreal won that game, Julien was probably gone. Are you guys, very quickly as we finish here, are you aware sometimes on the ice how tenuous it is for a coach?
It's a tough job. It's too bad, but there's not a long life expectancy for a coach, and that's a sad thing. And I think sometimes players, I think nowadays more so than before, kind of take advantage of that because they know it's an easy excuse. The excuse isn't going to be the players, it's going to be the coaches. So sometimes it's just the easy answer. If you're not playing good, everybody can just gang up and just, we don't have a good coach here. When the next coach comes in, we'll play better. And I think that's something that needs to be, obviously good teams, they don't do that. Detroit Red Wings, they don't go through a lot of coaches, but bad teams, I think, rely too much on that excuse of the coach, and the coach is always the one who gets the axe.
A little bit of insight for you there on Ultimate Hockey with Liam Maguire and Shean Donovan. Please join us back here on the various sites, prosportsblogging.com, liamsci.com. The Hockey Talk will continue right through the playoffs on Ultimate Hockey.